If you're a long-time listener of the Growth Colony podcast, or even a relatively new one, you'll know that our most popular topic is account-based marketing. Nowadays, there's so much research and literature around account-based marketing, but have you been able to find anything specific for the Asia-Pacific region? We've commissioned a research piece with Shift Research to discover the state of account-based marketing in APAC. Do you want to secure this exclusive expert insight? The finished report will give all B2B marketers across APAC a better understanding of how top firms are leveraging account-based marketing and the results they're getting within the region. As a thank you for participating, we'll send you an early access version of the report and invite you to an expert Q&A webinar. To get started, head to xgrowth.com.au/survey. That's xgrowth.com.au/survey. And secure your early access to these valuable insights today. Welcome to Growth Colony, Australia's B2B podcast. I'm Alex from Xgrowth. Each episode, we bring you B2B leaders to learn about their successes, fails, and what's working for them in the market. If you enjoy the episode, please consider giving us a 5-star rating on Apple and Spotify. That's right, you can rate on Spotify now and share the pod with a friend. And of course, make sure to join the community Slack channel at growthcolony.org/Slack to connect with our members. That's enough from me. Let's dive right into today's episode.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode. I'm Shane Huther with Xgrowth, and today I'm talking to Darrell Alfonso, Global Marketing Operations at AWS, about how you can become laser focused on customer experience, leveraging your Martech, and how Darrell does that at AWS. Let's dive in. Darrell, thanks for coming on the pod, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Always happy to talk about all things marketing. Let's get into it. Thanks for having me.
Let's do it. I want to start with mistakes. I want to start talking about, what do you see being kind of the number one mistake marketers make when it comes to Martech?
Yeah, the number one strategy, or the number one problem, and I already kind of gave it away. The number one problem that I see is where marketers let technology drive strategy, and they don't let strategy drive the technology. And that is such a very common pitfall to fall into, because we have a lot of cool stuff that we like to work with and we like to try out. Your average marketing automation platform, for example, will have 40 to 50 features and different things that you can actually, and tactics that you can actually try. And it's so often that marketers will make their entire roadmap, implement features 1 through 15, right? Rather than getting down to what really matters. And, the solve for this, and by the way, what ends up happening is you end up getting to a place where you weren't really sure if that's where you wanted to go in the first place, right? And I think that's a big problem. The way to solve for this is you want to, start with your goals and objectives. And then this is something that we do at Amazon, and it's called work backwards. So you work backwards from your key goals and objectives. And for each customer touch point, you figure out what type of technology you need to create the best customer experience possible. And in that way, that's really how you let strategy drive technology, and not the other way around.
Got it. I want to kind of dig a little bit deeper into the approach that you take later on that you talked about, kind of working backwards. But why do you think that is? Why do you think that marketers kind of start with the tool and let that drive the strategy? I feel like one of the things I feel is a lot of marketers learn with the Martech providers. When somebody comes and talks about, they talk, I remember when Visible was talking about pipeline acceleration and things like that. I felt like marketers were consuming their content, and then all of a sudden their strategy is becoming aligned to that. And the Martech providers also have the budget to kind of push out their content versus, someone who's not a consultant who really knows what they're doing, but they're not necessarily venture backed. What are your thoughts on that? What do you think is kind of the reason that marketers get dragged into this?
Yeah, I mean that's a big part of the problem. It's the Martech vendors for sure. There has been a lot of gains, I think, and educational gains from the Martech vendors just because it created a lot of interest in learning how to get better, so that part's good. But think of it this way. Let's say, for example, you're a Martech vendor, and the best solution to a problem is actually to use like a different tool than yours, either a competitive tool or something completely different. It's unlikely that you're going to create a bunch of content to help people go and buy another tool and use it. You know what I mean? There's conflict of interest there, and there's also like a lack of alignment around the goals for the Martech vendor. So I think that's key. You're not really going to be getting objective, unbiased advice when you look to their curriculum of programs and what they're trying to teach you. I've always said, you know what, if a vendor is selling things like lead nurturing, lead scoring, personalized content, etc., that's all of the things that they're going to promote and all of the things that they're going to teach you how to do as the answer to all of your problems. You know what I mean? I wrote this funny post on LinkedIn earlier. It was about direct mail and how a direct mail vendor would basically say, oh, if you have a problem with, getting meetings, send them a gift. If you have a problem with customer retention, send them a gift. If you have a problem, landing enterprise customers, send them a gift. Like the answer is always send them a gift. And like you can see how that kind of plays out over and over again when you're letting vendors teach you and letting vendors solve your problems for you. It should be the opposite. You know what I mean? You need to figure out yourself how to solve your problems first, and then take in the bunch of information that's available, and then make your Martech decisions that way.
Yeah, I totally, yeah. The experience that I had with that was when COVID hit and all the gifting platforms were like, oh, don't worry, we've solved this. We send them an email and they will fill in the form and we will get their home address and we'll send it to their home address. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, and they were very confident about it, right? I don't know if you remember or if you came across it. They were like super confident that this works. Don't worry about it. And I'm like, but really? And I went on Slack and I'm part of a bunch of Slacks and I wrote there. I'm like, how many people have seen this work? And it was just crickets. Like there was no one replying. So it's such a great example of what you mentioned. What about distractions, right? So obviously, one of the things that distracts marketers from getting results out of Martech is that strategy component. But are there anything else? Like what happens that kind of distracts marketers from getting those results? Where there are tons of examples. People set up a lead scoring system and it just completely falls apart and it doesn't work. What happens there? What distracts them, in your opinion?
One of the biggest distractions is when you're creating marketing to look cool for other marketers and also to sort of try and get promoted. I think that those are probably the two biggest problems, because your marketing should be centered around the customer. And a lot of times it's not the flashy stuff, I think, that really gets it, or it's not the latest technologies or techniques that will get your customers' attention. But I think that as a profession, that's what we all like to talk about and what's interesting to us, right, as marketers. And this can get quite meta, actually. But one of the other challenges too is like if you're learning from marketers that sell to marketers, that is itself this self-fulfilling prophecy of it's not really the best information. Like you get kind of the latest and the coolest and what's different and what's provocative, right? And that's one of the biggest distractions. So when people sit down, when marketers sit down and they create their plan for the year, they want to have something spicy in there. They want something like, oh, we want to send them the best direct mail possible that's completely personalized, and or we want to send them this video that is super flashy, whatever the case may be. But if you really look at it, we're not really sure if it's the customer they want to impress or if they want to impress someone else. And I think that's one of the big problems. And that's where that's where shiny object syndrome comes from, where you want the latest and greatest Martech. And that's where, I love how you put it, distraction, because that's the perfect word. There's creating value from the customer and educating them and getting them to a place where they find your solution as the answer to their problems. And then there's everything else. And I think that's, again, like you said, it's the perfect word, distraction. You're distracted from that.
Because here's what happens, right? A marketer goes and there's a new tool and they create a case study for it, or they create a business case study for it. Business case for it. And they're like, hey, we need this because of these reasons, yada, yada, yada. And the business approves it and they go and make the purchase. I also feel like when they make that purchase, the marketers kind of feel like, hey, I have to use 100% of these features. I have to fully utilize this tool, where really you kind of need only 50% of it. The other one is, again, going back to the same word, is distraction. You don't need to do that other stuff, but they feel like they have to. What are your thoughts on that?
It's opportunity cost. One of the there's that quote that I really like. It's called the enemy of the best is the good, or something like that. These things that we're doing, implementing these different features, trying to implement 100% or get 100% utilization of a particular Martech platform, it's not like it's bad. And I think that's the part where we get lost and distracted. There's actually some modest benefit from doing all of these things. And that's why it can go on for so long, because you'll see incremental improvement just because there's some value in most of the features. Most of them, I think, are not for just complete nothing. But opportunity cost really comes to mind, because if you're spending your time implementing a feature that's not the number one priority for you and your customers and aren't solving the biggest problems, you're losing time solving for the other ones. One of the things that we do at Amazon is we take a look at certain issues, and we list out, hey, before we even start, what are our biggest, our 5 biggest opportunity areas that we can grow? There's no tools, no solutions, no, hey, what are we using now that we're not getting 100% out of? And by the way, I used to think like this, especially earlier on. So, no shame to people that do that. I absolutely was one of the people that took a look at my marketing automation platform and oh, we're not using this dynamic content feature. How can we slide this in, right? So no judgment, but I think we have to realize that when you look at problems, look at the 5 key opportunity areas, list them out, and then start to list out the solutions and how you're going to solve for them. And then bring the technology in to support the solutions. And that's how you're working on the most important things. And people think that just because you have more resources, that all of a sudden this opportunity cost goes away. And it's definitely not true. There's always opportunity cost for every company, for every professional. And it's by not focusing on the most important problems to solve, that's where you get lost.
Tell me a little bit about assessing these opportunities. How do you go about, you talked about at Amazon, you kind of identify these top 5 opportunities. How do you kind of assess what are those top 5 opportunities?
I think of it in a hierarchy of decisions and criteria. So you're evaluating on different measures. The first one is customer experience. And I hope that people really internalize that. There's, it's a very common sort of belief that sales should be our number one customer. I think sales is one of our customers and one of our important stakeholders, but the customer, the one that pays the bills, the customer is the one that we should be focused on for number one. So customer experience is the first measure, and then it comes to business outcomes like revenue. right? Revenue and pipeline will be the second measure of criteria, right? So if you're trying to prioritize your opportunities or big projects, it's customer experience, then it's business outcomes, and then depending on your sort of maturity stage and like where you are, there's also like fortification long term. And fortification is making sure things scale, making sure things are secure, and making sure that your systems will support your business and your customers long term. That's a little bit more of an enterprise concept, because I think that if you're, like hyper growth companies won't have to worry about security as much, but enterprise companies really have to worry about security because they're always there's always these bad actors trying to ruin everything. And then comes efficiency. Efficiency is at the bottom, I like to say. Now, if you're a startup, efficiency might go a little bit higher, right? It might overtake fortification, but that's the way that I think of it. Efficiency is at the bottom. So looking at a problem, you want to think about those 4 different criterias and then also order your solutions in that way.
Got it. So you would go and say, hey, for example, there's an opportunity for us to do, I'm spitballing here, but do podcasting as a marketing channel. Well, the customer experience is maybe we get customers to be more informed. Their revenue is that we maybe have some inbound interest. Is that how what we're talking about here?
Yeah, kind of. I think it would start with, even before that, of knowing who your customer is, and then understanding if podcasts are something that they're consuming in that format and in that way. You know what I mean? Do they want to listen, or would they benefit, or do you have a more technical audience that would prefer to see visuals of actually how to code something or actually how to put things together? Or would another format be a little bit better? Still today, one of the things that we do at AWS is we host these open workshops and sessions where developers come and they see firsthand how to use the services, and we get them set up. So that format is particularly strong. So it really depends on your audience. So that's the way that I would think of it first. And then if podcasts are the answer, then look at the customer experience of the podcast, and then also like the potential business outcomes, which could be a little bit interesting because podcasts are a little bit of that longer tail effort, but it doesn't mean that you just don't try. So.
And I was giving podcasts just as an example to kind of clarify things for both myself and people who are listening. How do you kind of see Martech coming into the mix here?
The awesome thing about Martech is in the same way that technology improves our lives, technology can improve marketing. So today we can talk to our family member. You and I can talk now. We're on opposite sides of the world. We can see each other. Technology is amazing. I think that when you look at the emails that you get in your inbox today from brands like Amazon, like Netflix, you see incredibly personalized emails. Emails that look like they're made just for you. And that's how we use technology to improve marketing, right? You look at, hey, what do customers really want? And how can you use technology to make that happen? And by the way, this is a concept that I've been thinking about recently. And it's kind of like, how do you know what a good customer experience is? And the answer to that is when you look at something, whether it's an email, whether it's a website, whether it's a post, you look at it, your feeling is, whoa, this is cool. Or whoa, this is exactly what I need. And that's that delightful experience that you should be going for. You know what I mean? So for those people that are sort of wondering, what do I mean by great customer experience? That's it. You're capturing this feeling that customers have when they see your stuff. How can you replicate that? How can you do it over and over again? And there's a lot to unpack there. Like how do you make that happen? It's personalization, it's timing, It's marrying that with excellent aesthetics and visuals, and so much of it is based on data, which I think is a big missing piece that a lot of marketers don't think about.
Where do you think, from a data perspective, earlier we had a few chats about AI and machine learning kind of impacting the Martech space. Where do you think we're going from a data perspective?
That's a good question. I think that it's not new that our data is incredibly siloed and disparate among the different systems. I think that the first key thing that any Martech manager or someone managing the marketing ecosystem or stack needs to think about is, how do you unify and synchronize the data across the entire stack, right? And one of the ways to think about doing that is you need to think about the activities that happen with your customer and in the business, and then how do you and then the outputs that you expect and how that improves decision making. So here's an example. Let's say a customer visits a landing page. So that information needs to be tracked and sent into your, let's say it's a marketing automation platform or some sort of, content experience platform. That information then needs to be pushed into either your CRM or into a CDP, right? Normalized and formatted in a way so it can be compared against other similar marketing activities. That information then needs to go into either a data visualization or analytics platform and then present it into leadership. And then that information needs to go back down all the way through the tech stack and then back to the customer in a way that's even more personalized. So connecting all of those data points, I think, or those data pipelines are incredibly important. And you can't really do great personalized marketing without that sort of flow. So I think that that's the first thing that marketers need to get. And if they don't have that, I think more and more it's becoming table stakes to have that sort of connection. And even smaller companies without resources can do that with tools like Zapier and Workato. So there's a lot of, you don't absolutely need to have technical resources to achieve that. So I think that's the first part. And then I think there's this idea of making sure data is right and the same in all of different systems. That sort of unifying and normalizing data, I think, is also a big part of it. Because if you are in, like, let's say you're in some sort of advertising tool, and then another marketer is in a marketing automation platform for email, and the data that they're looking is different and doesn't match up, it can create incredible problems. So I think that's also another big piece about data.
Tell me a little bit about, when we were chatting, you talked about, hey, listening to sales it shouldn't be the number one priority, right? And that goes against some of the stuff that some other B2B marketers say. Tell me a little bit more about that.
This is assuming, where this comes from I think, a spike in marketers that come into marketing just to do advertising or social media because they think it's cool, right? Or to come up with interesting creative ad campaigns without sort of the end outcomes or outputs in mind from those creative efforts. And I think that there's a lot of reasons for that. I think like Mad Men and like the glamorization of marketing as a creative endeavor just for the sake of being creative, I think led to that sort of spike in number of marketers just liking to do marketing for the sake of it. Now, I think that that's definitely changing. And I think that a lot of the marketing automation platforms, and interestingly, because we're talking about this, the vendors are largely responsible for marketing becoming much more revenue oriented. And I love that. I think that anyone who's really studied business before, either now or before they got a job, have this innate understanding that you need to make revenue in order for the business to survive. So I think that now that's changing a lot. And today there's still this number of marketers that say that sales is the number one customer. And I think that has a number of problems. The first is it's incredibly short term. So, sales, again, no judgment, have these quarterly or even monthly quotas to achieve. And, they'll do anything to kind of meet those numbers, even if it means, unfortunately, harming potential revenue that can happen later on. So I think that long-term perspective is something that we as marketers need to bring to the table. And then another problem that it could be is if marketers may not know this, but sales compensation is an art and a science, and it's something that is done iteratively over time. And, honestly, when you first set out, like I created a sales compensation one time in one of my past roles when I managed sales development. I can tell you at the very beginning, we're just guessing, we're just saying, hey, I think that they can meet these numbers. And guess what? When you roll those out to salespeople, that's what they go for. They go for those numbers, and it could harm the long-term business. There needs to be some separation between those short-term goals and what's good for the business long-term. And, this is not some sort of epiphany, but whatever is good for the customer ends up being good for the business long-term. And we've seen that so many times. I do think that marketing should absolutely talk to customers. At Amazon, we have these large voice of the customer initiatives where we have people that just talk to customers and survey them all day and write up these expansive reports on what customers are thinking and what they're doing. And, it's one of the things I really appreciate about coming to Amazon because of their, extreme focus on the customer. We actually have this principle called the empty chair principle. And whenever you're in a meeting, there's an empty chair and the customer's sitting there. And that's who you should be thinking about. Like, is this the best thing for the customer? You know what I mean? Yeah. And I don't think that it should be different for marketing. In marketing meetings, have an empty chair and save that for your customer, because I think that'll bring more alignment and more direction to your decision making.
Got it. No, I love it. Darrell, I have a couple of rapid fire questions I want to ask you, but before I kind of get to that, is there anything on Martech, on CX that I didn't ask or we didn't cover that you think it's important for us to touch on?
One interesting concept that I've been thinking about a lot is for those of us that work in Martech, what does the future look like? Where are we going? I think actually the people that work in Martech have almost two separate paths. I think that there is, one that's more of the business operator track. And I think that marketing operations and Martech managers today, I think that they are really perfectly positioned to lead the marketing department in the years to come, just because of their closeness to the data, their proximity to the customer, and all of the things that make marketing really great. So I think that there's that track. I also think that there's a huge opportunity for marketers to become even more technical. I think that we're going to see a lot more marketing engineers. I think we're going to see a lot more marketing developers that love marketing, but are tech savvy enough to build solutions and craft innovative solutions to solve for problems. So I actually see two separate paths opening up for Martech marketers, and really excited to see.
That sounds so cool. Yeah. Marketing engineers. That sounds like a cool role to have. Let's dive into the rapid fire questions. All right. The first thing I want to ask you is, what is one resource? This could be a book, a blog, a podcast, a talk, whatever it is that has had a massive impact on you as a person. It could be both professionally and personally. What comes to mind?
This is an old one, but there's a book called Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy. Whenever you talk to me, I think you probably can get a sense that prioritization is something that's so meaningful to me. And I think that it solves so many problems that we face. And the concept of Eat That Frog is, if your biggest and toughest challenge, you should do it the very first thing in the morning. because everything will get easier after that, and it will make the most difference in your life. So that book by Brian Tracy has I've always remembered that.
Question number 2. If you could give one piece of advice to B2B marketers, what would that be?
You might not hear this one often. It's improve your writing skills. That is, I think, the best piece of advice for marketers, for salespeople, for business professionals everywhere. Clear writing is a reflection of clear thinking. And I think that if you write often and you focus on writing clearly and concisely, I really think you get smarter.
I really like that. And that's a big thing at Amazon from what I've read and what I've heard, where the meeting, I don't know if this happens at AWS as well, where you have to come to the meeting with a narrative and that gets distributed among everyone and they would read it. Does that happen at AWS as well?
Yep. So yeah, every meeting starts with 20 minutes of silence reading it's usually like a 6-page memo or narrative. And, once you start writing down the solutions to your problems or dissecting problems on paper, it's like, it's like the fog lifts. And I think that one of the things why people don't do it often is it's really hard. So hard to write. Imagine like starting a blog post or, going through what I'm going through with writing. It's incredibly hard to write, but incredibly fulfilling and gratifying once you do so.
Yeah, and positive outcome. All right, question number 3. What are the influencers that you follow in the marketing space?
Let's see. I like Sarah McNamara. She is works in marketing ops in Slack/Salesforce. She's great. Her content is awesome. I follow John Miller, who was a previous founder of Marketo and since went to Demandbase and CMO over at Demandbase. I love the stuff that he's doing over there. Yeah, and then your classic ones like Seth Godin is one of my favorites. Ann Handley, one of my favorites. So yeah, also some of the classic, I think, marketing influencers I've always followed.
I love it. Last question. What's something that excites you about B2B today?
I like where social media is going for B2B. I think it's been taking strides. It's becoming much more creative, much more personal. It's just really great to see. I think LinkedIn's own journey is a really cool thing to watch, because a few years ago, the only thing that you post on LinkedIn are like, you either share articles or you say when you got a new job or if you raised funding, and that's it. And if you look at LinkedIn today, there is some low quality content, but you see a lot of people just writing their thoughts and talking about the industry, telling people what they like about work and, tips, and, sometimes it can get personal. I think it's very exciting to see that blend of business, work, and life. I think that is so great to see.
That's awesome. Have you explored the TikTok side of the B2B side of TikTok?
I love TikTok. I did make an account for my dog and, got some engagement of just videos of my dog running around and doing funny things. I think it's so fun. But I think it's going to get there. Right now, I think it's very difficult to, unless you are, the algorithm is so crazy right now where it surfaces really the most viral, most interesting things. And I think that you'll only see educational B2B content, stuff like that, is if you are really looking for it. So I think that's why it's a little bit tough right now. But one thing that I think that you're seeing a lot of is there's a lot more professional development, self-development posts coming. There's a lot of how-to posts that are happening, home decor, do-it-yourself, personal finance. I see a lot of that too on TikTok. And I don't doubt that B2B will soon follow after that. So you're definitely seeing educational content on TikTok, but I think it's a little early still for really good B2B content.
Really interesting. Really interesting, exciting. Darrell, love the conversation, man. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks so much, Darrell.
Thank you.
This episode of Growth Colony was produced by Alexander Hipwell. It was edited by Dave Samito, with additional editing and music also by Alexander Hipwell. Special thanks to Tina Wabe and Rod Hoda. We couldn't make this show without you. The show is hosted by Shaheen Hoda. If you enjoyed the episode, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. Yes, you can rate on Spotify now, so please do. And share the pod with a friend you think could get value out of it. If you'd like to connect with the members of Growth Colony, join our free Slack channel at growthcolony.org/Slack. Thanks again for all the support, and we'll see you again in the next one. This podcast is brought to you by Xgrowth, an account-based marketing agency with a strong specialization in the APAC market. If you're starting to roll out an account-based marketing initiative in your firm or looking to take your current program to the next level, whether it's one-to-one, one-to-few, or one-to-many, don't try to do it all alone. Chat with the ABM experts at Xgrowth to see how they can help you both on strategy and execution of your next ABM campaign. To find out more, head to www.xgrowth.com.au. That's www.xgrowth.com.au.